We're going to have a lot of fun on this week's episode of the Maverick Makers Podcast. We have Matt Cundill. He is a 20-year veteran of the radio industry. He is also the owner-operator of the Sound Off Media Company, an audio solutions group providing voiceovers and podcast solutions. Matt launches and manages podcasts for businesses, entrepreneurs, and performers. He also hosts 3 podcasts, including the Sound Off Podcast, You May Also Like This, and the podcast Super Friends. You're going to love this conversation. We dig deep into the world of podcasting, and I hope you give some of his podcasts a listen. Let's go. Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Maverick Makers Podcast. This week, we have Matt Cundill, owner and operator of the Sound Off Media Company. Thanks so much, Matt, for joining us. I am so excited to talk to you and get into the world of podcasting and all that magic. So welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited. So you have a really cool, interesting story and journey. So let's start by exploring that Maverick journey and tell us how you started, how you went from intrapreneur to entrepreneur.
Well, many years of radio. I think it starts at Bon Jovi, 1986. Oh my God, that's such a great song. Living on a Prayer, You Give Love a Bad Name. And I heard it on the radio. I was raised on radio and I wanted to be in radio. And I got into radio. And I did some, starting at the age of 19, I was doing all night radio.
Wow.
Places like Kentville, Nova Scotia. I went to Acadia University and took political science and started my radio career shortly after in Kentville at Annapolis Valley Radio. I think I was broadcasting to a number of cows in the farming communities up and down the Annapolis Valley. By 22, I'm working at Chaume in Montreal. It's one of the legendary radio stations doing all nights. And from there, Edmonton at the age of 24, went to do evenings at 100.3 The Bear, another legendary radio station. And how blessed I was to work for nothing but winners my whole career. Back to Chaume to become assistant program director in 2002. And then I got to be program director in Winnipeg at Power 97. Worked with great people. And that really was a 25-year radio career. And then it abruptly ended. Working for Chorus Entertainment, they made some changes. They were bad changes. When I left the company, it had, I think, a $30 or $40 share price, and today it's 30 cents. So, it's clear they don't know what they're doing and haven't for 10 years now. And I just passed that 10-year mark of departing radio. But in that time period, it took me about a year and a half to figure out, okay, well, what's next? What is going on? And I began to see, and I had to travel to see it too. I went to Chicago to the podcast movement conference, and there I saw people making audio with a lot of enthusiasm. And I thought, I don't know what this is exactly and how it's packaged and marketed, but I have those tools. I will figure it out. And it reminded me a game of pond hockey. I can keep the puck on my stick, but when I find the goal, I'll take a shot. And it took till 2016 to really land on it. And we started the Sound Off Media Company. And took it into the podcasting area.
Love it. What a story. Holy cow. And that voice, the perfect radio voice. So it's amazing. And you also do voiceovers.
I do. And so the Sound Off Media Company actually started long before that. And it was really a place to house my voiceover business. And just after I was let go from radio, we did some radio consulting. We were trying a number of things. And, voice work was something that it just comes to you when you're in a radio station. They always say, oh, you need to read these scripts before you go on the air. And so I was reading all these ads and, being coached quite well through it. But one of the things when I did jump into doing it full time was I discovered that your radio announcer voice is not very well liked in the voiceover world. So if you say, I've got a background in radio, it's like, yeah, we don't need you. We need actors. And so when you go to jump into being a voice actor, you actually need to act. You need to get some acting lessons. You need to do improv. You need to be versatile. You just can't have this one voice where you're going on the radio every day and you need to sort of stay in your box. They actually want you to leave the box. So
Whoa.
that was another journey unto itself.
Wow, fascinating. What's the best part for you now of being an entrepreneur?
Working from home.
Yeah.
Come on, not gonna lie. Um, I never thought of myself as an entrepreneur. I thought of myself as somebody who wanted to continue the audio journey. It just happened to be that we moved into a time where we could do it from home. So I never thought, oh, I'm going to become an entrepreneur and this is what I'm going to do. I just wanted to create audio. And I think, again, the light bulb shines and goes off in 2017. Where do you want to be? Where do you want to work? And what do you want to do? And I was going to radio conferences. I have a podcast about broadcast and now podcast. But I was talking to a lot of broadcasters and thinking, I'd love to get back into radio. Can you move to Detroit? Can you move to Cleveland? Can you move to Cincinnati? Can you move to Boise? No, 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 and no were the answers. It didn't feel like I needed to do that. And I said to myself, I really want to work for this one company out of New York. And the company was called Panoply. Panoply eventually became Megaphone. Panoply was the home of a number of podcasts, including Malcolm Gladwell's. And I went to Andy Bowers, who ran it, and I said, Andy, I will move to New York. I will work for you. Here's my offer. And he goes, well, why? Like, no, why what? Well, why move? You can do it from home. And I thought that was the disconnect right there. Radio, you needed to be in the building. You needed to. And podcasting, they were all doing it remotely. There were podcasters recording in closets with socks over the microphone. And these were top podcasts. You can create audio anywhere. So I said, I don't need to actually go back into a physical building to do this. This is something I can build from home.
And that was kind of my next question, which is, what do you think the differences are between radio and podcasting?
They are incredibly different.
Yeah.
More than we think. In fact, podcasting has more to do with blogs and magazines than it does radio. The only thing radio really has in common is the microphone. Radio is live, local, it is now, it is information in the moment, it is time, temperature, traffic, it is in the car, it's easy, quick, accessible, and free. You don't have to download it. Podcasting sort of feels like on-demand radio.
Yeah.
And I know I use the word radio in there, but it's on-demand audio more than anything.
Yeah.
And I think that's really it. That's the difference that I've really experienced when it comes to radio and podcast. And for years in radio, we were told, be sure to be one-on-one and speak to the listener and make it that great one-on-one experience. And podcasting essentially came in and took that from radio. So in radio, you speak at people. In podcasting, you speak to people.
Huh. I love that analogy. Beautiful. So you kind of touched on it, but any other reason why you got into podcasting? So it seems like, again, back to the Maverick move, you sort of jumped on when nobody knew what the heck it was, or that it wasn't popular yet. So was there like one pivotal moment, or it was just...
Podcasting has its roots in being free and open. It's an RSS feed, which was created back in 2002. It was created by Adam Curry, who actually was an MTV VJ. And at some point, he wrote the script along with a guy named Dave Weiner, and out came the RSS feed, which was, hey, if we update this audio, you can be the first to get this on your computer. Eventually, it came time that Steve Jobs invited Adam Curry to come and take a walk around Apple and said, I'd really like to include podcasting in this. And, once... And it wasn't called podcasting then either, right? It was the iPod that made that famous. But I'd like to put this into the iPod. I'd like to put this into the iTunes store and make this available to everybody. And once that happened, we began to have these podcasts. And it's always been about free, open, not having gatekeepers. You can say what you want. You don't have program directors, general managers, the higher ups to tell you what you can and can't do. And I think that came to light when I was in Chicago in 2016. I looked at all the people who were recording and I said, I think I've said no to just about everybody in this room for a radio show or a radio show idea. And now they were doing it on their own. So that's the difference I saw. And that's why I got into it. It was just free and open.
Mm. And let's sort of continue on that theme. So why do you think podcasting right now is so important as a form of media? Because media has, my background way back when is publicity, and that's where I think we've crossed paths, but it's changed. It's the Wild West. It is so, so different.
It's long form.
Yeah.
And there's very little long form programming that's left and out there. A 1 hour, I've got an idea. I'm going to pitch a 1 hour show. What 1 hour show? There's no 1 hour show on TV. Maybe it's the national, maybe it's news. That news is actually just a bunch of sound bites. Everything has been culled down to 7 seconds, 37 seconds, a minute and a half, 2 minutes, and nothing more than 3 minutes.
Mhm.
So where's the long form stuff? And I think we saw sort of a viral moment many, many years ago with Jordan Peterson, who got onto a long form show and they let him go, but somebody was sort of fishing for the sound bites. And here's a long form piece of programming that went viral. And so podcasting is really, it can be 37 minutes, it can be an hour and 37 minutes. One of the top podcasts out there is 6 hours, Hardcore History with Dan Carlin, I believe. It's a 6 hour podcast. It can be as long as you want. It can be short. It can be 2 and 3 minutes. So, everything up until this time in traditional broadcast media has been 30 seconds for commercials, 30-minute programs, 60-minute programs, and it's been in a block, and it no longer needs to be that way.
Awesome. What trends can you share? I know you're just recently at a conference about podcasting. Anything really light you up about it?
Yeah. So there's some big players in here, including YouTube and Spotify, who I think want to own a little bit more of the podcast space. They're getting to a point where they can start to dictate the terms. And I'll throw Apple in there as well, where they can dictate the terms of where it's uploaded. And it may not be about an RSS feed anymore. It certainly isn't with YouTube. YouTube does not use an RSS feed. They take your audio and they actually convert it to a video. And the metrics are different over there and things are counted differently. YouTube is about YouTube. Spotify is trying to be about Spotify. Apple has, who are really the pioneers when it came to really making podcasting what it is. They are not there yet when it comes to, the ownership piece. I think they do own a lot, but that is declining. So I think that's a little bit of a worry and a little bit something that we need to pay attention to in the future. I've always thought there's going to be a day where I'm going to be like, you know what? I'm not putting this on Spotify anymore. Only 10% of my audience is using it and listening to it. They can go elsewhere to get my show. If Spotify is going to start to hamper down maybe on creators, maybe you don't need to be there. I think the big discussion a lot of people are having these days is, do we need to be on YouTube? And yeah, you should be on YouTube for marketing purposes. I'm not sure you should be telling people to consume the show on YouTube, though.
That one's interesting for me as someone who specializes in video. It's funny because the feedback I've received is, we want to see you, we want to watch you. So that's interesting.
Yeah. And so the best piece of advice that I always give podcasters is be everywhere. So definitely be on YouTube because people want to see you. And that's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, doesn't matter. 100, I don't know. But some audiences do want to, consume you their way. Be everywhere, be where the audience is. And if the audience wants to consume you there, be there.
Great piece of advice. Let's talk about AI. So how's AI affecting podcasting negatively or positively? Any feedback?
Yeah. So positively for now, because there's about 11 steps you need to do to create a podcast. You got to book the guest. You've got to record the guest like we're doing right now. You got to write some show notes. You need pictures, graphics, some episode art. After that, you're going to need an editor. You're going to need a producer. You're going to need, I'm at 7 now. And then after you release the show, you're going to, I mentioned show notes. The video part comes out. Anyhow, AI is now at a point where it can help you do a number of these things. So we can take the words, and transcription is another one. I mean, I think a lot of people got into transcription just so that we could, help people who were challenged listening to audio. Now you can read the show. So it's something that can help. Where it's going to get messy down the road, and the technology already exists for this. We can have this podcast that we're talking to right now translated into another language,
Well,
where your voice and my voice can come out in Spanish. It can come out in French. It can come out in Mandarin. There's AI that will translate all this stuff and replicate the samples of our voices in this interview to create a product that can be listened to in another language. Where you do run into trouble, by the way, is on two fronts. When it comes to transcription, you have a guest named Patsy, and maybe the transcription identifies that as Nazi. That's going to be a problem. We also can look at, whereby you could probably take the words that I've said and maybe adjust it inside programs, whether it's Descript or Podmagic or Podcastle or any one of these tools that uses AI. You can actually change my words around to do positive things. Maybe I'll have the wrong year. Maybe I'll mispronounce something. That's going to be a good change. But if you can change my words around to say things that I really didn't mean or intend, that's going to be a negative impact. So it's how we use this technology that's really going to be, it's how we use this technology that's really going to define our future.
Fascinating. I love this. Wow. What gets you up in the morning?
The sun. Yeah, I wake up with the sun every day. So in the summer, I'm up at 5:30, and in the winter, I'm up at 8 o'clock. That's it. I mean, I wake up every morning to the future, and podcasting is the future. First thing I do is I will roll over and ask for Alexa to play me in the latest episode of Pod News. I'll get the Pod News and I'll go, oh, there's been a change in the industry. Google's doing this, Apple's doing this, Spotify's doing this. We got to get to work and make some changes in how we deliver podcasts to people. It's small, subtle changes that happen to the industry every day that I wake up to. And yeah, I'm pretty much told by those companies about where we're going next.
Love it. Okay. Favorite person you have ever interviewed?
Wow. Broadway Bill Lee from WCBS in New York is a legendary afternoon drive host. Just, it was such a joy to interview him. And another legendary broadcaster I got to interview was Lisa Guerrero, who is on Inside Edition. She chases bad guys for a living, but both of them are broadcast heroes. And they're still doing broadcasting today, at the age of 60, and Bill is now in his 70s, but they're out there doing it. And Lisa gets on a plane every day to go and talk to some really terrible people. She gets 3 minutes on Inside Edition every day, but it's just wild, and their journeys were fantastic. I just love, those are the two that stand out to me.
Nice.
And I've interviewed Mick Jagger before, but it wasn't for a podcast. It was for that was for a radio show. I got 10 minutes with Mick Jagger. Everyone's like, wow, that's amazing. But when I look at the long form podcast, yeah, it's Lisa Guerrero and Broadway Bill Lee.
But Mick Jagger. Wow. Okay. That's
it was 10 minutes of Mick Jagger, and all he told me was that Keith Richards really loves shepherd's pie. The fact that I got that out of him was great.
I can imagine. Wow. Who do you dream of interviewing?
I don't know. I haven't really thought of that. Who do I need, and what do I just really like people and their stories. And if you have a story, I sort of prefer the story rather than the person. So let's say, and the reason why I'm saying this is because I could get Gordon Ramsay maybe tomorrow. Maybe I do want to interview Gordon Ramsay. I'm not sure that I could provide another angle on Gordon Ramsay that people already don't know about. So I'm not bringing anything new to the table, right? Who's fascinating? Well, Mick Jagger's fascinating. But I'm not sure that my story, that I could squeeze anything more out of it that's going to make for an interesting story. So I chase stories more than anything. And I'm not here. This is not a cop out. It's just that, because I see this all the time with podcasters, like, I've got to get great guests. I go, I guess you can. And then they go get the guest. Well, we didn't get the downloads. I said, of course you didn't get the downloads because you didn't present a new angle that we already don't know about. So if you go and get Gordon Ramsay is on TV 4 nights a week. We already know. A lot of people just want to consume Gordon Ramsay as a chef yelling at wannabe chefs. That's the bit. He's not doing that on your podcast. Therefore, your podcast is not going to get the downloads, right? So podcasting is about stories. I like stories. So if I see an interesting one, a couple weeks ago, I saw one. There's a guy named David Gerson out of Atlanta, and he's on Instagram all the time. He's talking about soccer refereeing, and he's interpreting rules and showing me, and he's teaching me every day about this is a fascinating guy. He does this for no money. He's telling people these things for no money. Oh, David, what's your story? How did you get into being a referee? Why is it that you're telling people every day on Instagram or on TikTok about the rules of soccer? And then he corrects me and says, it's the laws of the game. It's the laws of soccer. And these are the stories that I really like to get into.
Very interesting. I love it. And you're totally right. It is about the story because otherwise, who cares?
I see this all the time with Instagrammers. Instagrammers, they come and they say, I want a podcast. They go, okay, let's do it. We get to episode 4. There's lots of downloads. And then after episode 4, it drops off. And they come back and they say, why are the downloads going down? You're not doing your job. No, people have decided they just like you in a bikini. People have decided that they really just want to watch you kicking a soccer ball or doing what you do on Instagram. Audio wise, you're not very exciting. So you got all your followers to come to Instagram, from Instagram to come to podcasts to listen to the show. Now they've decided they just like to see you on Instagram. But there's good news. You're eventually going to develop an audience of people who like your audio. You just got to give it time.
Okay, everybody listen to that one. Are you ready for the lightning round?
Ready as I'll ever be.
Okay, let's do it. Night or day?
Night.
It was easy. Big fish in a little pond, little fish in a big pond.
I enjoy being a big fish in a little pond. I should enjoy being a little fish in a big pond more often.
Okay. You are building, because we just mentioned soccer, and that's how you and I connected. I know you are the ultimate soccer fan. I don't even want to get in the ring with you, but you are building the ultimate soccer team. Which 5 players are a must on your team? They could be any age. They could be dead. They could be anywhere.
Yeah. So I'd probably take Jude Bellingham because he's fresh in my mind.
Yeah.
From yesterday's performance. He's early 20s and like, look what he does. I'd probably take Vinicius Jr., also fresh in my mind because I watched him play. I would always take Messi. I'm not sure I would take Ronaldo. I'd probably put him 6, and there's nothing against him. I just think there's a chemistry factor with him wherever he goes. It's all about him. And if you're giving me 5, I don't know that he would mesh with the other ones. So I'd probably make him 5A, as it were. I would always take Maradona. You would just have to. And I get to take one more just to balance things out. I'd probably take Mbappe. Why not? He's good, right? Yeah.
All the young guys.
Yeah.
What about Beckham?
I mean, Messi takes the kicks,
Fair.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I'd like to take him too, but there's only room for 5 on this team.
Fair. Awesome. Amazing. Other than Canada, where do you want to live?
A good question. I would like to probably live in Italy or Spain, one of those 2 countries. And I spend a fair amount of time in Spain. I don't spend nearly enough time in Italy in order to do it. But I would also take France. And the reason why I mention those 3 countries is because when I go to purchase wine, those are the 3 countries I go to. That's best wine in the world, best food in the world in those 3 countries.
Agreed. Who inspires you?
For a lightning round, this is not going well.
Fair. Dead silence.
Yeah. I guess there's a degree of silence here because I've never really thought about who inspires me. Because I take from so many people, I sort of see the stories, and then I just sort of go to that in that particular moment.
Fair answer. Good one. What's your legacy?
Whatever I create in podcast. And I've thought about what's going to happen after I die. Will all this audio still reside? Will it live? Will it be stored? Will there be a record of it? And in the 90s, I recorded so many great interviews like that. Where's that interview with Mick Jagger? It's gone. It went onto a piece of tape and I don't even know where it is. And we got into the digital age and I was like, oh, all this stuff is going to be recorded. So the stories that are go into digital, that are being printed, that are being saved and stored is going to be used in the future, maybe with AI. It will come out and be replicated in the future, whether it's legal or illegal or whatever. But the digital age, this is what it has afforded us to do, is to create all this audio and content that, for better or worse, is going to be able to live forever. I really am sad about all the great interviews I had from the 90s that were on reel to reel tape. I had an interview with Alanis Morissette before she was Alanis Morissette.
Hmm.
Where'd that go? Oh, darn, it's gone. Maybe it's in a reel to reel tape in the back that I need to transfer over to digital. But yeah, legacy is going to live on the internet, for better or worse.
Hmm. Maybe Alanis needs a reboot with you.
I would take one more with her.
Oh,
Yeah, actually that would be a good interview, and another one would be probably Chad Kroeger from Nickelback. We have a history that goes back before, the before he was famous kind of thing. And you should jump on that stuff. Like, this is a period now. I mean, I'm in my 50s. Don't wait for stuff. Matthew Perry was somebody I went to school with, and he died earlier in the year. And I was like, oh, it would have been great just to have one interview with him. And then you don't get the opportunity anymore. So for anybody who's thinking about doing that interview, I know we talked about guests and getting your guests, but get your dream guests, get them on your show, get it on tape, and make it part of your legacy.
all right. I'm putting it out there. Mark Cuban and Ryan Reynolds. Oprah, if you're listening, let's go. All right. How do you want to change the world?
Through audio, getting into people's ears, um, telling stories, telling them well. I think right now, though, in the era that we're in and what we're doing, I really sort of think that I'd like the truth to become reality. There's so little truth that's out there. Everybody gets a microphone, and there's a lot of bad audio out there. There's a lot of lies going about. There's a lot of hate. Um, and I think if we could all find a way to get back to the truth and be more media literate, I think I deep down that's the one wish I would have for everybody. We're not at a point yet where kids are taking a media literacy course, but there should be one. We don't teach enough history. We don't learn enough history. These are the things that I sort of hope the world can get around to. But I don't really see that there's no desire for any of this stuff. There's nobody really sort of telling our kids, hey, you need to learn, what's real and what's fake on TikTok. You need to learn a little bit about history, what's the truth, and how to study history. And that there are many different histories and many different stories that are being told, whether it's a Canadian history. I interviewed Craig Baird, who does a Canadian history podcast. And he told me something which is true, and that's that every province has their own different take and story for every different piece of history. And I go, oh, we tell it so many different ways. Some of it's not right. And that needs to be fixed.
Well, this so resonates, and you're so absolutely right. Last question. What's next?
That's an amazing question because it's going to be podcasting is eventually going to morph its way into a generic form of media. And it's already started. So we already see that with YouTube. So we already see it. It will be distributed many different ways and consumed whatever ways we want. So what's next is going to be can you be out there? And it's going to also get very expensive to make the right kind of media. So we're going to begin to see a tier where, I was talking about podcasters who use a sock to do their show. Those downloads are not very big, and it's tough to get, oh, they don't have a camera, oh, they can't do video, or they don't have the internet. We're going to begin to see a chasm now between the people who can and cannot. And eventually, and this is the worry, is that some of the wrong people are going to get to the top of podcasting and broadcasting and get their messages out there. So there'll be fights at the top and there'll be fights at the bottom for creating content.
Well, this has been a fascinating conversation. I could talk to you all day long, but you know that, and we'll have to do another one just about soccer, but you'll talk most of the time and I'll just listen. And thank you. It was amazing.
Thanks so much for having me on the show. Appreciate it.
Thank you. The Maverick Makers Podcast is sponsored by Maverick Makers Content Creation Collective. We fuel your content pipeline through video, photography, design, and editorial. Let's connect to your audiences and make more sales. Learn more at maverickmakersco.com.